Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you all to the next session, which is entitled, How Can the International Fragrance Association, IFRA, Help Build Understanding in the Niche Fragrance Market? I'd just like to see a show of hand who knows IFRA. Okay, oh, great. It's wonderful to see that the International Fragrance Association is known in the industry and also with this audience, because actually perfumers are the primary users of the IFRA standards which we're setting. All right. I have been asked to take a seat, and it's less engaging, but I do appreciate your attention. So thank you very much to the organizers to invite IFRA today to share with you how we could actually help build understanding in the niche fragrance market. And I think I saw all hands going up. You know who IFRA is and why we exist. We really want to make sure that fragrance is a safe and essential part of life. And IFRA's role has always been, since its inception, to promote the safe and sustainable use of fragrance for everyone's enjoyment. In the previous session, one perfumer said, "Don't study chemistry. Perfumery is an art." And that's very true. I was amazed to walk around the booth here and see all this dynamism, all this creativity, and this richness of metamorphosis. But at the other hand, as you want to create, science is what underpins also the art of perfumery. And for IFRA, we're a science-based organization that works with and through national associations as well as governments and companies around the world. So we have a tripartite membership, global multinational companies that finance IFRA, but also 23 national associations in 24 countries around the world. That is Europe, Latin America, Asia Pacific, and North America. And in countries where there is no national association, people can become a supporting member of IFRA, like in India, which is also an incredible sourcing hub. So IFRA has a dual role. Our role is, number one, to set the standards for the safe use of fragrance. And anybody that is a perfumer here probably is familiar with the IFRA standard to some extent. The other role is to advocate for workable regulation with governments around the world to maintain as wide a palette as possible for you, the perfumers. Because at the moment, what's happening in the regulatory world, there is also a metamorphosis going on there. And the metamorphosis is a tsunami of regulation coming from all angles. But still, the common goal that we have in IFRA, and we're sure you have too, is safety first. At the bottom of these, you see here the perfumers on the bottom left. You want to call for regulation that allows you to create with the freedom to choice, as we have seen in the previous session. But the industry, as industry, we need workable, sustainable, and proportionate laws. And the consumers are more and more demanding transparency. And the regulators, as I said, are sending us tsunamis of regulation because they feel that people and the planet need to be protected, and even more. So I would now like to speak about the IFRA standards a little bit more, in more detail, and then come to some of the other tools that we offer as IFRA. The first thing we offer to perfumers worldwide is the IFRA Code of Practice and the IFRA standards, which are tools that you can download on the IFRA website. But of course, as a producer, manufacturer, the ultimate responsibility for compliance resides with the company. How do you start with regulatory compliance? Have you heard of the IFRA transparency list? Yes? I see faces nodding. Yes, so everything actually in IFRA starts with the IFRA transparency list, which is the list of fragrance ingredients in commercial use every 5 years. And we know today in the fragrance industry, there are 3,619 ingredients that are in use, in commercial use, and some of them are fragrance ingredients used for their scent, some are functional ingredients, but some are synthetic, some are naturals, but all of them are on the list. And if they are on the IFRA transparency list, then actually they are in the scope and in the inventory of the perfumer's palette. And we do a survey, a global volume of use survey every 5 years. We send this out to the whole world. That's our member associations, but also other non-members. And we gather the data to inform the next publication of the transparency list. Why do we do that? Because the fragrance ingredients on the IFRA transparency list, they get a safety assessment. Once they have a safety assessment, then they're also evaluated for whether or not they should get an IFRA standard. And so if any company participates in the volume of use survey and their ingredients then go on the IFRA transparency list, they will get a safety assessment. And the other benefit is that if there is a regulatory pressure or NGO pressure and the material is on the IFRA transparency list, then we will activate a strategy to protect those ingredients or defend those ingredients and or work with governments to provide more scientific data to assure the safety and safe use of those ingredients. So at the end of March this year, we're going to make a call for the next volume of use survey, and we will also share it with you on the website. And if any company here would like to contribute to that, for 6 months you can do so. You can send your ingredients that you use back to IFRA, and then they will go on the IFRA transparency list. And subsequently, then they go into the whole safety assessment program. So the IFRA standards are also recognized with governments around the world because they are the risk management system for the industry, as you very well probably know. And there are the standards are set through a very open and transparent process together with the Research Institute for Fragrance Materials and member companies, and they are reviewed by an independent expert panel. So, and RIFM publishes all safety assessment in Elsevier. There's 1,800 fragrance ingredients that have publications, safety assessment publications, including the more now also naturals. The naturals are coming now, but these are discrete synthetic chemicals. Just for those that are interested, how is our standard process actually developed, and how do you assess the safety of different endpoints? Here you see a human being, and you see that there are 12 categories, and the safety assessment done by the fragrance industry looks at how much fragrance you can dose maximum based on these body sites that you see. So it could be arms, underarms, stomach, skin, face, scalp, neck, and so forth. And then from that, there are 12 product categories that IFRA divides and RIFM divide the consumer good products in. And you see here, I saw a lot of fine fragrance. Fine fragrance is category 4. If you want to know, can I use a certain ingredients in my fine fragrance, or if so, in what dose, you can go to the IFRA website and then find out if that material has a standard. And then you can dose accordingly. You know, some niche perfumers, I know they don't have a lot of softwares, even though there are software providers out. Some still work on Excel spreadsheets, but all of this can be made available, is public information. And we encourage also the non-members to use this information. So what is today out? IFRA set 263 standards, and what for? So a standard can ban a fragrance ingredient altogether, which we did. Last year we banned mint lactone, which was a fragrance ingredient not used very little, but it was found out to be genotoxic, and therefore it was banned. Now we're on the 51st amendment, and we have 263 standards, and most of them, they set restrictions. So, for example, like oak moss, certain natural ingredients, but also synthetic ingredients, they have a restriction, or they have a specification that you have to use them in such a purity. And this is all described on the standards. Now we're on the 51st amendment, and the deadline for complying with new creations is actually March 30, 2024. So as of next month onwards, no fragrance perfumer should use standards that are not compliant. But I said it's voluntary for niche perfumers, but strongly encouraged. And then for existing formulations that require reformulation, the market has until October 30, 2025 to change the formulations. So we also work with governments around the world on the IFRA standards. For example, China has a lot of legislation in place, and they have also their own standard setting body and their own standards for fragrance ingredients. We are working with our Chinese member association, CAFSI, the Chinese Cosmetic and Flavor and Fragrance Association, to translate the standards into Chinese and work with the government. And seeing that the government understands the standards and also makes them available to Chinese companies. The same is true for any other country in the world. In some countries, standards are incorporated in the legislation, like in Asia, the Asian cosmetic legislation. In other countries, they are required for an IFRA certificate is required for product notification. So we have this global network of engagements with governments, with and through the national associations, to make sure that as they develop their legislation, could be chemicals legislation under which fragrances fall, we can actually provide them with sufficient information so that they don't have to start from scratch. And this allows international companies the freedom and the license to operate. I would just now like to switch to another program that is interesting for people to know. It's called IDEA, International Dialogue for the Evaluation of Allergens, because allergens are going up everywhere, and including allergens from many different sources. So IFRA is interested if somebody gets an allergy, a skin allergy, is it from fragrance or is it from something else? We all know most of the allergies come from metal, nickel, or natural ingredients, but there's also a possibility that fragrance allergens could come from fragrance use. So we're currently doing a very large in-market surveillance study with 9 clinics and dermatologists around Europe to see what do patients go to the hospital with, how is the allergies that they have defined, and subsequently could the allergy be from a fragrance ingredient. This also helps to assure that the IFRA standards are working in the marketplace and the legislation is working in the marketplace. Now I'd like to switch topic again on another big program that we're working on for the fragrance industry, which is a collective and common program on sustainability, a framework for industry action. I've been around the exhibit this morning and I see a lot of sustainability references. I see upcycled, and it's a trend, yeah, clean fragrance, all this is in a trend. At the same time, sometimes it's difficult to know how do you translate these common terms into a program for a whole industry, for a whole sector. We have done this together with the flavor and fragrance industry, and our program is the framework that starts with, if you want to do responsible sourcing on the left, what you actually need to pay attention to. Yeah, where's the legislation, Nagoya Protocol, CITES, and so on, and what programs are there or can be developed collectively to make sure responsible sourcing happens. And here we partner with UEBT, the Union for Ethical Biotrade, on a priority program for responsible sourcing to assess risks in natural supply chains. And then is environmental footprint. Again, the world is asking for your greenhouse gas emissions, and you need to deliver that on an industry basis. The third pillar of the sustainability framework for the fragrance and flavor industry is occupational health and safety. What happens in the workplace, exposures, equal opportunities, training, and all this. And then product safety. And lastly, transparency. I talked to a lot of people this morning and several said, we really appreciate that IFRA is opening up so much because we don't know a lot about it other than it seems to set restrictions and boundaries to fragrance creation. When we say our intent and our goal is just to do the opposite, it's to help perfumers have a very wide and creative palette available to them. So this charter that I mentioned, which is the sustainability framework, is signed by 138 companies around the world. And we set the priorities for 2024. For that, we said, what do we work on? There's so much to do on sustainability. Where do you start? So we did a materiality index, and we asked the value chain, can you tell us what do we need to work on? Or where can IFRA provide you the platform for collective and common action? And you see here there are the 16 priorities for the industry, carbon footprint, biodegradability, responsible sourcing, deforestation, green chemistry principles, circularity, circular economy. All these initiatives either have regulatory drivers or they have market drivers. So that means the industry should organize itself and do something about it. We published our second sustainability report, which gives you a snapshot of where the industry is at this moment in time. The report can be downloaded for the IFRA from the IFRA IOFI website, and I encourage you to have a look. Don't have time now to go in it, but in essence, it shows that the fragrance industry, because we're so rooted in the natural world, has a high awareness about sustainability issues, and there's a lot of efforts going on by all companies that want to make a difference and strive to a more sustainable world. In the previous panel with the rising perfumers, I mentioned already, it was said that don't study chemistry because perfumery is an art. But at the other hand, IFRA felt that there is still a need in the market, and we got a lot of requests from companies to give more tools so companies can do their own sustainability assessments and improve their own sustainability business case. So we partnered with John Warner, who is the father of green chemistry, and his company Beyond Benign in the US, and we designed a green chemistry compass tool. And this tool is going to be published very soon in Perfumer and Flavorist as a research article, but it gives the perfumery community another tool to look at their sustainability profile of their fragrance ingredients. So what we did, we took the 12 principles of green chemistry, we deducted 3 of them because they're not relevant for fragrance ingredients, and then we mapped them against the 5 principles of the Sustainability Charter, starting from responsible sourcing to your own operations, into your customers, distribution, all the way to the marketplace. And we developed a questionnaire. So now the questionnaire can be downloaded from the IFRA website, and anybody can use the tool. It will be free of charge, and if you have questions on how do you answer this or that question, again, we will maintain this and will be available as Q&A, because this was developed with a lot of company experts that have also either green chemistry programs in place or green chemistry initiatives. So what is the IFRA added value? First of all, through the IFRA network of associations, we cover the fragrance value chain from upstream, our upstream suppliers, all the way to the downstream customers. So it has a global value chain approach. And with others, we really can provide this global policy overview and industry developments. So now we're working at the request of the industry to develop a fragrance industry-wide definition and position on microplastics. Microplastics is big, manifests itself in many different legislation. So we have had holding statements in the past. Now we work with everybody to update the position. We also make available webinars, information letters. I don't know if some of you are on our mailing list. Monthly news send goes, and this is available to non-members as well. Because this way we can provide also early intelligence on acting and developing and emerging issues. So the theme was here today: how can IFRA help build understanding in your segment with the niche perfumers? We're really a resource for you, any company, large or small, including the niche market. We have a committee with ISPC, the International Society of Perfumer Creators, which some of you have probably signed up or are members. We meet every 6 weeks. We look at what's of common interest, and we disseminate various relevant information, as well as listening. What should IFRA address that is on your mind, which we're not doing today? So we also work with small and medium-sized companies can collaborate with IFRA. If they're a member of a national association that's a member of IFRA, like here in Italy, it would be Federchimica. Federchimica has, I saw Roberto was there, Mangano, I think he's now left because he knows this stuff inside out. He has been for many years in our European Regional Committee, which deals at all legislation related to the Green Deal and REACH and chemicals management and so forth. So anyway, small companies can be nominated through their national association and then they can work in IFRA committees. And also in countries where there is no national association that's a member of IFRA, the company can become a supporting member of IFRA. So more membership information is available. Lastly, I just want to draw your attention to a book we developed for our 50th anniversary last December. We did it together with our media partner NE. It's called We Love Fragrance, but it's a testimonial to our shared love for fragrance and IFRA's goal to make sure you maintain your creativity, but at the same time, we work on the risk management and safe use of fragrance. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and see if there are any questions. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. May I ask two questions, please? One which is mine, and the other which we are being asked constantly by retailers, by buyers, by customers,
Sorry,
by everyone.
could you speak up a little bit because very hard to hear.
Two questions. One of them is mine, and the other one is being asked by retailers all the time, customers, buyers, everyone. Chemical and allergen problems with food are potentially far more dangerous than dermatological. And what on the side of the public people don't understand is why can IFRA not be giving the allergen information and then allowing people to make their choice rather than banning? And this is very hard to explain to people.
Yes, so there are two dimensions to your question. One, if IFRA bans a fragrance ingredient, it's on a scientific basis on research findings from RIFM, Research Institute for Fragrance Materials. And they ban if the material is genotoxic, which means it could cause mutations.
Yes.
Now, allergens can be used because not everybody has allergens. Yeah,
No,
I mean,
no.
I don't have any, but some people suffer a lot from it. So what we do, and in Europe there's been legislation in place for many years, more than 10 years, to label allergens.
Yes.
Well, IFRA doesn't need to label because we're B2B supplier to our customers, but our customers, which are the ones that make the finished good products, they have to label the allergens on their products, and for that they need the information from IFRA. So we work, for example, with Cosmetic Europe, which is the European umbrella cosmetic organization, because you may be aware that there's new legislation in place in Europe that increased the labeling requirement from 26 allergens to, I think it's 81 or 82.
Yes.
So now, and before that came into law, we worked with Cosmetic Europe in a perfumery working group where also the companies are there, the CPG companies, the big ones, they are in that group, and we looked at what information needs to be given in what form, how, can there be some standardization or some harmonization,
Yes.
and so forth.
It's just hard when you have been using something, and rose oil or something, that's been used for thousands of years, and the buyers in your retailers say, and synthetic is better. It's difficult to make that translation.
Yes, and that's a very good point. And what we're seeing is there is a perception out by consumers and the marketplace that natural is better and synthetic is worse. But in IFRA, we put them on equal footing, because also the regulators, and we now just before Christmas had a new legislation passed in Europe called CLP. It's for classification, labeling, and packaging
Yes.
of substances. And in there, a lot of dual-use materials are natural and synthetic. Yeah, they are both, or they can be produced, found in nature, but they can also be made synthetic, and they're nature identical. So the legislation does not differentiate from the origin of the product.
No.
A molecule is a molecule,
Yes,
they
exactly.
say. Yes, and
Back to
we're
chemistry.
saying this too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and when that molecule penetrates the skin or the body doesn't know whether it is from a natural or a synthetic source. Yeah, but there is the market always acts, and there is this, what we're also seeing, there are two drivers. One is the policy drivers by the regulators, and the other is the market drivers, or the consumers are just, or the NGOs, the non-governmental organization.
Yes.
They don't put as much pressure on the fragrance industry, but the market, they want all these.
Yes.
And that's why the European Union just now working on a green claims directive, because there are a lot of claims in the marketplace that cannot be substantiated. So there's regulation coming that will also look at, the claims that are made. Are they, can they be substantiated?
Yes. I think my point more was the food comparison, because you don't get samples of all the food that you buy in a shop, but we give testers to people so they can try and see if there's a reaction. Although you may die from eating something from anaphylactic shock.
I share your frustration.
And people have the choice to say, oh, no, I won't buy that one, I'll buy that one. But nobody bans. But my real worry, my question, not our client's question, is we are being terrified about the prospect of the citrus analysis that is looming above our heads. And that's what I'd quite like to ask you, what you think is happening in that direction, please.
Yeah. The general problem is at the moment in European Union legislation that the regulators are shifting the total mindset. They flip what's called the risk logic on the head, and they're moving from risk to hazard-based approach. Now, what does that mean? Risk means that you look at the exposure. Yeah? If you have a ingredient that can have hazardous properties, but you are not exposed to it or in very small amounts, there is no risk. There's a threshold of toxicological concern. Once you exceed that threshold, then you move into the risk space. But the regulators in Europe, they say there are thousands of chemicals on the market, and fragrances fall under chemical legislation. Yeah? So, and we need to speed up the process of moving from one-by-one, case-by-case assessment of single substances into an assessment of
Yes, it's just worrying that whenever you do anything or you get together with various colleagues and they say, okay, IFRA are going to ban citrus oils, end of. And everybody's getting very wound up about it.
No intention to ban citrus oils. We want to protect citrus
I
oils
understand.
and maximum use.
Yes.
And we're working with the regulators to make sure they understand that fragrances are unique, that the exposure is low, that a lot of components like the limonene in the citrus oils also can't be engineered out. They are there in what we call NCS, natural complex substance, and therefore we look at finding ways to minimize the exposure.
Like bagatin-free bergamot.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. You really answered it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the problem with the regulators is they move to this hazard-based approach, which says if the molecule has hazardous properties, we want it out of the market. We do not agree with that. Other industries do not agree with that. The cosmetic industry doesn't agree with that. So we are working to build, we're in constant dialogue with the regulators to make sure that they see our point of view. There's a question in the back.
Yes, I have an awkward question about transparency. So I see the thing about IFRA becoming more transparent. That's obvious on the website and all of the activities. But I kind of see the opposite happening with RIFM these days, in that a lot of their historical data seems to have been, for example, archived away from their website. And it seems to me that you have to pay a lot of money to access their data. Is that correct? I was just wondering what's the reasoning behind having the actual reasoning data withheld, and if that's going to change in the future potentially?
I think it's just the opposite. They publish. Now, a few years ago, RIFM said that we need to publish our safety assessments. And for that, of course, you need to have analysis. And so now they're publishing, as I said, 1,800 safety assessments are published in Elsevier. Now, every single study that is in the RIFM database, why make it available to the public? Some of them are public from REACH database. You can go to the REACH database, and those studies are available to the public. And others are in the RIFM database. They are not really relevant. So but both IFRA and RIFM have really made great strides and pushed towards more transparency. Both organizations do more webinars to the public, explaining the science and the rationale, why certain things are set, but also with policymakers.
Okay. I think a good example would be, I think it's called the not supported list.
Yeah.
There's lots of mention of it, but it doesn't seem to be available anywhere. Is that behind a paywall, or is it?
Oh, I can't really speaking under the purview of RIFM, but they have a program, yes. When they don't get samples. If an ingredient is on the IFRA transparency list, means it's in commercial use, RIFM will do a safety assessment. But if they don't get a sample, then how can they do a safety assessment if they don't have a sample? So in that case, then the material goes on the non-supported list. But if the manufacturer at some point in time comes and gives the sample, or if the IFRA NCS task force has been able to establish a typical concentration, then that material will go off the non-supported list. It's just a safeguard to make sure that, to do safety assessments, you need to have data.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, not the case. Well, thank you very much for your attention, and I wish all the ladies a happy International Women's Day. And you a wonderful event and a great continuation of your event. Thank you.